Hi, kids! Welcome to AI Kids Stories. So glad you could make it. Let's get started. Once upon a time, in a cozy little house with a big green garden, lived a sweet and gentle girl named Cinderella. Cinderella was kind to everyone. She loved to sing to the little bluebirds that fluttered in the garden and always shared her breadcrumbs with the tiny whiskered mice who lived in the kitchen walls. Her best little mice friends were Gus, who was round and loved cheese, and Jock, who was clever and quick. But Cinderella didn't live alone. She lived with her stepmother and her two stepsisters, Anastasia and Rosella. Her stepmother wasn't very kind, and her stepsisters were often grumpy and very bossy. "Cinderella, sweep the floor," Anastasia would shout, even if the floor was already clean. "Cinderella, polish my shoes until I can see my face in them," Drizella would demand, stamping her foot. "Cinderella, fetch my breakfast," her stepmother would call from her comfy bed. Cinderella did all the work in the house. She scrubbed the pots until they shone like mirrors, dusted the furniture until it gleamed, mended all their clothes with neat little stitches, and cooked all their meals. Even though she was always busy, Cinderella kept a smile on her face and a happy song in her heart. Gus and Jock would often try to help in their own little ways, squeaking encouragement or tugging at loose threads. One sunny morning, a royal messenger with a shiny trumpet arrived at their door. He unrolled a big scroll tied with a golden ribbon. It was an invitation from the king. The king was having a magnificent grand royal ball for his son, the handsome prince. "A ball!" shrieked Anastasia, jumping up and down. "We're going to meet the prince!" squealed Drizella, clapping her hands. Every young lady in the kingdom was invited. Cinderella's heart did a little flutter of hope. "Oh," she said softly, "may I go to the ball too?" Her stepmother let out a short, sharp laugh. "You to the royal ball? In those simple, patched clothes? Don't be silly, Cinderella. Besides, you have far too many chores to do." Anastasia and Drizella giggled. "You'd look so funny at a ball, Cinderelli," they teased. The day of the ball arrived, and the house was full of hustle and bustle, but only for Anastasia and Drizella. They tried on sparkly dresses and shiny jewels, fussing and fuming. "Cinderella, fetch my pink ribbon, the sparkly one." "Cinderella, find my dancing shoes, not those, the other ones." Cinderella helped them get ready, even though her heart felt a little heavy, like a stone in her chest. She wanted to go to the ball so much. Finally, her stepmother and stepsisters, looking very grand in their rustling gowns and feathered hats, climbed into their carriage. They waved goodbye, but not to Cinderella, and trotted off down the road, leaving Cinderella all alone. Cinderella watched them go until the carriage was just a tiny speck. A little tear trickled down her cheek. She went out to the garden and sat on a little stone bench under the big oak tree. The stars were just beginning to twinkle in the darkening sky. "Oh, I wish I could go to the ball," she whispered to the friendly moon. Gus and Jack nuzzled her hand, trying to cheer her up with their tiny squeaks. Suddenly, a shimmering, swirling light appeared right in front of her. It sparkled like 1,000 diamonds, and right in the middle of it stood a kind-looking lady with a twinkling wand and a warm, gentle smile. Her eyes sparkled like the stars Cinderella had just been wishing upon. "Hello, Cinderella, my dear," said the lady softly. "Don't cry. I am your fairy godmother." Cinderella wiped her eyes in surprise. "My fairy godmother?" "Yes, indeed," said the fairy godmother, "and I heard your wish. You want to go to the ball, don't you?" Cinderella nodded, her heart suddenly filled with a balloon of hope. "Well then, we haven't a moment to lose," said the fairy godmother with a cheerful clap of her hands. First things first, bring me a big round pumpkin from the garden. Cinderella, with the help of Gus Gus and Jack, who pushed with all their might, quickly found the biggest, orangest pumpkin she could. The fairy godmother tapped the pumpkin with her sparkly wand and said the magic words, "Bibbidi-bobbidi-boo." The pumpkin began to glow. It grew bigger and rounder, its skin smoothed out, and then, poof! It transformed into a magnificent golden carriage, shining brightly in the moonlight. Cinderella gasped, "Oh, it's wonderful!" "Now for some horses," said the fairy godmother, her eyes twinkling as she spotted Gus Gus, Jack, and two other little mice who had scampered out to see the magic. Another wave of the wand, another bibbidi-bobbidi-boo, and the four little mice turned into four proud white horses with feathery plumes on their heads, ready to pull the golden carriage. Next, she saw a portly brown rat peeking from behind a rosebush. Bibbidi-bobbidi-boo! And the rat became a jolly coachman in a smart uniform, complete with a hat. And two little green lizards sunning themselves on a stone. Bibbidi-bobbidi-boo! They became two footmen, standing very straight and tall, ready to open the carriage door. Cinderella clapped her hands with delight. It was all so amazing, like a beautiful dream. "But my dress," Cinderella said, looking down at her simple, patched clothes. The fairy godmother smiled knowingly. "Of course, my dear, we can't have you going to the ball like that." With another swift wave of her wand and a final powerful bibbidi-bobbidi-boo, Cinderella's old dress shimmered and swirled with light. It changed into the most beautiful ball gown she had ever seen. It was a sparkly, silvery blue, like the twilight sky, adorned with tiny, glittering stars, and it swished wonderfully when she moved. If you enjoyed the story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And on her feet? The fairy godmother tapped them gently with her wand, and suddenly Cinderella was wearing tiny, delicate slippers made of pure, sparkling glass. They twinkled with every step. Cinderella twirled around, feeling like a true princess. "Oh, thank you, fairy godmother," she cried, her voice full of joy. "Now listen very carefully, Cinderella," said the fairy godmother, her smile becoming a little serious. "This magic is wonderful, but it only lasts until midnight. When the clock in the palace tower strikes 12, the very last chime, everything will turn back to what it was before. The carriage will be a pumpkin, the horses will be mice, and your beautiful gown will be your old clothes. So you absolutely must leave the ball before midnight. Do you understand?" "Oh, yes, I will, I promise," said Cinderella, her eyes shining with excitement and gratitude. "Then off you go, my dear, and have a truly wonderful time at the ball." Cinderella stepped into the golden carriage, gave a happy wave to her fairy godmother, and the white horses galloped off smoothly towards the king's palace, the glass slippers twinkling on her feet. The palace was even grander and more dazzling than Cinderella had ever imagined. Thousands of candles lit up the enormous ballroom, music played a joyful tune, and lords and ladies in their finest clothes laughed and danced. When Cinderella stepped into the ballroom, a hush fell over the crowd. Everyone turned to look. No one recognized her, not even her stepmother and stepsisters, who were busy trying to get the prince's attention. They just saw a mysterious and incredibly beautiful princess in a stunning gown. The prince himself saw her from across the room. He had been politely dancing with many ladies, but his heart hadn't felt a spark, until now. He had never seen anyone so lovely or so graceful. He immediately walked over to Cinderella and bowed deeply. "Good evening, Princess," he said, his eyes full of kindness and admiration. "May I have this dance?" Cinderella smiled shyly and curtsied. "Yes, please, Your Highness," she whispered. They danced and danced, and it felt like they were floating on a cloud. The prince was charming and kind, and Cinderella felt so happy she thought her heart would burst with joy. She laughed and talked with the prince, and for a little while she forgot all about her chores, her stepmother, and her bossy stepsisters. She even shared some yummy little cakes from the refreshment table with him, and they giggled together when a little bit of frosting got on his nose. Time flew by like a magical bird. Suddenly, Cinderella heard the deep, resonant sound of the palace clock beginning to chime. Dong, dong, dong. It was counting towards midnight. "Oh no," she gasped, her eyes wide. "Midnight! I have to go! I almost forgot!" She quickly pulled her hand away from the prince's. "I'm so very sorry, Your Highness, but I must leave right now." Before the prince could say a word or ask her name, Cinderella turned and hurried out of the ballroom. She ran down the grand marble staircase as fast as she could. In her haste, one of her little glass slippers slipped right off her foot and was left behind on the steps. There was no time to go back for it. She had to hurry. She reached her golden carriage just as the clock struck the 12th and final chime. Boom! If you enjoyed the story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. As the carriage sped away from the palace, the magic began to fade. The beautiful golden carriage shrunk and turned back into an ordinary pumpkin, rolling into a ditch. The proud white horses became Gus Gus, Jack, and their two mice friends again, squeaking in confusion. The jolly coachman was once more a fat brown rat, and the tall footmen were little green lizards, all scurrying away into the night. Her beautiful sparkly gown dissolved away, and she was once again wearing her simple patched dress. Cinderella found herself sitting by the side of the road, a little out of breath, with Gus Gus and Jack squeaking worriedly beside her. The only thing left from the magical night was the one little glass slipper she still wore on her other foot. She smiled, a little sadly, but also with a warm heart. "It was wonderful," she whispered, carefully taking off the remaining slipper and holding it close, even if it was just for a little while. She hurried home, tiptoeing in through the back door so her stepmother and stepsisters wouldn't hear her. They came home much later, grumbling that the prince had spent the whole evening dancing with some unknown princess. Back at the palace, the prince was very sad. The beautiful, mysterious princess had vanished like a dream. All he had left of her was the tiny, delicate glass slipper she had dropped on the staircase. "I must find her," he declared to his father, the king. "The girl whose foot fits this exquisite slipper shall be my bride, for she is the one I danced with all night." If you enjoyed the story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. So, the very next day, the prince and his trusted royal duke began to search the entire kingdom. They went to every house, from the grandest mansion to the humblest cottage. At each house, every young lady tried on the little glass slipper, but the slipper was so tiny and so delicate. For some, it was far too small. For others, it was much too narrow. Some ladies tried to squeeze their foot in, others tried to stretch the slipper, but it was no use. No one's foot could fit perfectly into the magical glass slipper. Finally, after many days, the prince and the duke arrived at Cinderella's house. Anastasia and Drizella were terribly excited. They pushed and shoved each other, each wanting to be the first to try on the famous slipper. Me first, cried Anastasia. She sat down, and the duke held out the slipper. Anastasia squeezed and wiggled her rather large foot, trying to force it in. "Ouch! Ouch! It's too small!" she wailed. Then Drizella tried. She grunted and strained, pushing with all her might, but her foot was too wide and too long. It pinches. It doesn't fit, she complained loudly. The stepmother looked very disappointed and flustered. The Duke was about to thank them and leave when the prince, who had been looking around, noticed Cinderella quietly sweeping in a corner, trying to stay out of sight. If you enjoyed the story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. "Excuse me," the prince said kindly, "is there any other young lady in this house?" The stepmother scoffed. "Oh, that's only Cinderella, but it couldn't possibly be her. She's just a simple servant girl. She didn't even go to the ball." But the prince, remembering the kind, sparkling eyes of the mysterious princess he had danced with, had a feeling. "Please," he said, gently but firmly, "let her try on the slipper." Cinderella shyly came forward, her heart beating like a little drum. She sat down on a small stool, and the royal Duke knelt before her, holding out the tiny, shimmering glass slipper. Cinderella gently lifted her foot, and with a soft sigh, she slipped it into the glass slipper. It fit perfectly. It was as if the slipper had been made just for her foot. Anastasia and Drizella gasped in astonishment. Her stepmother's jaw dropped in disbelief. Then Cinderella smiled a sweet, gentle smile and reached into the pocket of her patched apron. She carefully pulled out the other glass slipper, the one she had kept from the magical night at the ball. The prince's eyes lit up with recognition and pure joy. He knew at once. "It's you!" he cried, his voice full of happiness. "You are the princess from the ball. I've found you." Just then, with a familiar shimmer and a happy sparkle, who should appear in the room? It was the Fairy Godmother, smiling brighter than ever. If you enjoyed the story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. With a joyful wave of her wand and a happy bibbidi-bobbidi-boo, Cinderella's patched dress once again transformed. This time it became an even more beautiful, sparkling white and gold gown, fit for a true princess. The prince was overjoyed. He took Cinderella's hand, his heart full of love. Cinderella, being so kind, looked at her stepmother and stepsisters, who now looked rather sheepish, and she forgave them for all their bossiness, because her heart was good and true. The prince asked Cinderella to be his princess and to marry him, and of course, with a happy tear in her eye, Cinderella said yes. There was a grand and joyous royal wedding, the most wonderful the kingdom had ever seen. Cinderella and the prince lived happily ever after in the beautiful palace. And guess what? Gus Gus and Jack and all their little mice friends moved into the palace too. They had their very own tiny cheese castle in the royal pantry and were very happy. Cinderella was never bossed around or made to do chores again. Instead, she was loved and cherished by the prince and all the people in the kingdom, and she spread kindness, happiness, and her lovely songs wherever she went. And they all lived happily, happily ever after. If you enjoyed the story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel.